Today we're talking about why Shenzhen really matters to this kind of the hardware startups in the other part of the world, because Shenzhen is the manufacturer, the world's manufacturer, but it's also something really a place really amazing for startups to work with, to set up a partnership with them. I think. Okay, I know, and just for our speakers here, Jason was raised in Shenzhen, was born and raised in Shenzhen. And he's now doing a startup named Vigo. It's sort of like very interesting wearable devices. And Arvind and Samuel, you've been in Shenzhen for quite a lot of times, okay. And for Hermione, is for you, and your co-founder is in Shenzhen, but you've never been there before, okay, right? No matter of that, just to give me 1 or 2 words or phrases to describe what Shenzhen is in your impression, just about that, okay.
Yeah, starts with you, Jason.
Okay, well, I'm from Shenzhen, so I guess Shenzhen is more what's it like in my memory. Shenzhen's a great place. It's, for those that don't know about Shenzhen, it's right next to Hong Kong. It's a very new city that was built in the past 30 years. And so Shenzhen to me is vibrant city life, really good food, and a very international city because there's people from all over the world in Shenzhen. There's actually over 100,000 expats, so over 100,000 people from outside of China in Shenzhen. So to me, Shenzhen is a very international city.
International city, yeah. Arvind?
Let's see, in just a few words, for me, it was very much like stepping into the Wild West. It really, really was, where rules were being made as you go. Let's see, it's very hidden city. I think a better word would be multi-layered. You have some things on the surface, but the real Shenzhen's underneath the surface, and that's when you really could fall in love with the place. Changing, right? It's constantly changing. Every time I go to visit, there's something new. Like not just a new restaurant, like a new neighborhood. Let's see, what else? Dynamic, right? Just very dynamic.
Dynamic, changing, multi-layers, right? Sort of like that. How about Sam?
So how many of you guys are familiar with the toy Legos? Do you guys all know what Legos are? So Shenzhen is like, you have your Lego collection and you just dumped it out on your floor. Every building block that you could want to find is right there on the floor, and it's up to you to find it, put it in the right place, and make it fit perfect. So if you know what you're doing and you go to Shenzhen, you are in heaven. But if you've never built with Legos before and you're walking around, you may step on something sharp.
Heaven or hell, it depends. How about you?
I'm the Silicon Valley part of our company, so my co-founder is based there. I've never been to Shenzhen, but if anyone wants to take me, I'd be willing to check it out and step on some sharp Lego. But really, we're a 3 to 4 person startup, and we've relied heavily on the factories and the network in Shenzhen to get our hardware product off the ground.
Yeah, Hermione is doing this kind of things like named Vibease. It's sort of like the smart vibrator.
It's a smart vibrator.
Yeah, smart vibrator. Okay, great.
It connects via to your iPhone or Android via Bluetooth, and your partner can control it from the other side of the world.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Okay, for Hermione, your answers just really raised my curiosity, because you have never been to Shenzhen, but your co-founder is that. Just sometimes I talk with a lot of people, I mean in the valley in San Francisco, some guys who are incubating hardware companies or who are running a hardware startup, and they always tell me, okay, in the current stage, if you try to set up a really well-organized hardware startup, you have to find a partner or co-founder in Shenzhen. So do you agree with that? I mean, just not from Shenzhen, like Jason is based in Shenzhen. Jason now is based in San Francisco, actually. So do you think it is reasonable, or do you have these kind of options in your understanding?
Our co-founder has literally spent the last 3 months working alongside the factory there. And if he didn't, we wouldn't have shipped our product. He really had to be in the factory, pushing them and working with them to get the product out and shipped. He was actually on the production line building them alongside the factory. So I think it's important to have a co-founder on the ground there, and we would not have come this far unless he was on the ground in Shenzhen.
Great. How about Sam? Yeah. You have the co-founder in Shenzhen, actually.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to be partnered with a company, inWatch China, which is the sort of golden child of the Shenzhen hardware startup world right now. They just won the Best Chinese Hardware Startup 2013. And I believe that without people that truly understand not just the manufacturing and business relationships, but the general structure of the culture and how things work socially there, you're never going to optimize your product flow and your design and your creative process as well as if you did have that. That said, anything is possible through careful effort, and if you construct a system that works without someone being on the ground in Shenzhen, please tell me.
Yeah, completely agreed, and echoing the same remarks, it would just be impossible, right, without being able to go to Shenzhen, meet with factories, find the right one that's actually going to work with you, and create the best product possible with you. And again, there is a lot of opportunity to fill that gap, right? To not try, that's a lot of friction to have to go there, look around, find the right partners. But really, when you're making a product, it's all about the expertise of the details. And without the expertise of those details, you're basically relearning something that's already known. And that becomes really difficult. So a big part of the process is finding the ones with the expertise in those details that can actually teach you something about your own product. And that's where the partnership with Shenzhen, especially from people that aren't used to manufacturing, becomes really, really valuable.
Yeah. So I think Shenzhen's value comes in the things that it's really good at, and finding that is really important. Like for us, we're building a Bluetooth headset that helps drivers stay alert at the wheel. So it's a little Bluetooth headset that you wear on your ear, and it's picking up information from your eyes to see if you're showing signs of drowsiness and buzzing you when you doze off. So with our device, we do our design and our sales in the US, and we do our engineering and manufacturing in Shenzhen. So Shenzhen is really good for that. Over here, we're doing our design because we're building something for the face. And so, someone in the US has a different facial structure versus someone in China. And so we have to do the design here. We're selling to the US market. But without design, without engineering, we do that in China, in Shenzhen. There's a lot of hardware talent. There's a lot of access to like mechanical engineers and factories. And so Shenzhen is really good for that. And so if you're partnering up with a company in Shenzhen, then engineering and manufacturing is definitely the companies to be partnering up with. And that's what like all of us here are doing, is like working with Shenzhen companies on the manufacturing and development side.
Okay, great. Everybody talks about this kind of the how to work with the Shenzhen local partners, no matter they're the manufacturer partners or the co-founders, or this kind of the roles there. So just something just very interesting is that, we always just comparing with Silicon Valley or San Francisco with China. But actually China is still multi-layers because, if you talk about Beijing and Shanghai, particularly in Beijing, I have to say the ecosystem, the tech ecosystem, is getting much more similar with San Francisco now. It's getting much more closer now. But Shenzhen is still a different story. Even, we are in China sometimes when the Beijing entrepreneurs talk with the Shenzhen entrepreneurs, and we are feeling the same in the different worlds actually, because we have some kind of different mindsets in understanding some kind of the question, points or those kind of things. So my question is that, could you just briefly just to describe what the main differences between the people or the culture, this kind of startup culture, between San Francisco and Shenzhen? Could you just briefly introduce that?
Obviously, again, I haven't been there, but if our company would not work unless my co-founder Dima was there and I was here, because to get our product to market, the investment that we've raised has mainly come from Silicon Valley, even though our product is built in China. And I mean, if you Google Vibease, you'll see that we've been covered in every newspaper, and we've got international media all over the place. And we wouldn't have really got that without me pushing the product here in Silicon Valley. So you know, it's like the yin and the yang. You know, it's two halves of a whole. And I think you need somebody on the ground here in Silicon Valley, just as you need somebody on the ground over there.
Okay.
I think that we in the United States believe that the land of opportunity is ubiquitous all around the United States. And I think that in the hardware and software community, there's a reason why we've all congregated around places like Silicon Valley, is that this is truly where the opportunity pools the deepest. That opportunity extends to things like failing at something exciting and then going right back to your investors and saying, let's try again, and having them willingly give you another shot. China is less advanced in the sort of failure model. They are accepting a failure at this point, which is a large step forward, but it is by no means celebrated or encouraged as it is here in Silicon Valley. The inverse is true for hardware innovation. If you're trying to innovate with hardware here in Silicon Valley, you may very well find a VC telling you that they're not investing because your market is not middle of the road enough and there's not enough people that are immediately lined up to purchase it. Whereas in China, they're much more willing to push the envelope and create a device that maybe could be the perfect thing, not in this following step, but in the step after that, and position themselves well in that market to reap the benefits in the future. So they both excel in different areas, and if you're able to leverage both of those areas successfully, you have a product that is 2 steps ahead of everybody else's. Your design is better, and your marketing is better. So those can obviously be done the inverse and have difficulty on both of those senses, and it all comes down to business development at that point. So the strengths exist in both areas.
Great.
I'm sorry, you already have yours.
Yeah, well said. I think one of the other things that could be an interesting difference is actually in Silicon Valley or the US, there's a strong emphasis on getting to the one, right? If you look at Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 model and 1 to many, getting to the right one or prototype of your product, that process is pretty easy in the Valley. You know, you could hack stuff together. There's a very strong culture of rapid hacking in the Valley, and that's very, very developed. Lots of engineers can think through problems and do things in elegant ways, but it all falls down when you get to scaling in the millions, right? And doing that in a way that's cost effective and again, high quality. Because that knowledge is resident in Shenzhen. And because of that, Shenzhen tends to skew to starting in the many, right? So I've seen prototyping shops with pick and place machines, right? Like, well, that's not prototyping, right? You know, like, so it's an immediate change of like, you know, yeah, but you know, this thing could do 300, you know, in a day. That's, you know, like, no, right? Like, you're still figuring out what the value proposition is, right? So again, I like what was said earlier, is two halves of the same coin. I think it'll be interesting to see how they evolve, both the regions evolve to have the other sides of the coin kind of resident in those geographies.
I think a huge interesting point about Silicon Valley versus not just Shenzhen, but also, you know, other parts of the world is that Silicon Valley is sometimes a little bit of a bubble, so, you know, in its own way. So like anything that you do here, people would think, wow, that's so cool. Like over here, you see people wearing Google Glass on the streets, you see people adopting a lot of new technologies. And so here, there's a lot more acceptance towards new technologies that people want to try out. Every time an app comes out, everyone's downloading it and trying it out. Versus, for example, you know, other parts of the world, there's a little bit less adoptance towards that. But what you get from that is, you know, something new gets to adopt in Silicon Valley, so that's really nice, and you get people using it. But then it doesn't necessarily reflect the you know, the real world of what other cities or people in other places are going to accept. In Shenzhen, people are pretty forward-thinking. So, like, you know, in Shenzhen, I used to go to SIG to buy mobile phones, and then the phones there are very advanced. They're sort of 3 years ago. They're kind of the phones that you get right now with like quad-core processors and everything. So there's a lot of cool new technologies out there, and so there's definitely more acceptance in Shenzhen to new technologies. But comparatively speaking, Silicon Valley, something that works over here might not necessarily work in other parts of the city. So I would say like Shenzhen or China is more realistic. In Silicon Valley, it's a lot more forward in terms of technology.
Okay, great. That's interesting. But still something like if you have to work with this kind of Shenzhen partners closely, even from day to day, or you have the co-founders there, which means you have to work remotely with them from time to time. So these kind of things, so could you just give us some kind of the suggestions on how to remotely work with those partners or co-founders in Shenzhen, though you cannot travel every week, right? But you can try it out, but I believe you cannot travel every week to be in Shenzhen. Probably every month or every 2 weeks is a maximum, I think. So how to work remotely with them, or how to leverage the resources in Shenzhen to maximize the effort of this kind of collaboration? Yeah.
So Shenzhen has been, am I saying it right? Shenzhen.
Shenzhen, yeah.
Shenzhen.
The pronunciation is Shenzhen, not Shenzhen.
Shenzhen.
Shenzhen,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we're a 3-person startup, and so Shenzhen has been very accommodating in meeting us and helping us get this off the ground. I know that my co-founder has gone through everything with them on how to get the motor to make less noise, how to get a better silicon for the coating. Basically, the factory has been innovating with us, and you'd normally pay for this, but obviously we can't pay for it because we're a startup. So they've been very accommodating in helping us and innovating with us in order to get our product off the ground. So I think there is an element of community, and I think the factories are very excited about Silicon Valley startups, and they've helped us a lot. I mean, even though my co-founder has had to be there pushing on the ground, they've really helped us with everything.
So I think that the details really come in heavily here. If you're able to accurately communicate the details to the individuals who are in the factory via a remote methodology, via WeChat or Skype or another tool of your choice, if you can be clear and confirm that they have received that information clearly, then you're going to have a lot easier time with it. Other than that, it really has to be careful structure. You must create teams within teams that function autonomously, and if for some reason that team requires external help, that they're able to really, really rapidly reach out to the sources that can give them that help. So to answer your question directly, how do you work well with a team from Shenzhen remotely? It's all about communication, details, and the correct tools. And if you really stick to those elements and there's no exceptions. Nothing is done just this one time or just this one way because it's faster or easier. Just do it right from the start and make sure it's very clear from the start, and you'll save yourself so much time in the crosstalk and the erroneous manufacture and the small things that you could have shortcutted had you been very, very specific.
I think for me, I'm very biased, right? Apply to hacks. So I think but it underscores the real message, which is you have to find a partner to work with in Shenzhen, right? Like you're not going to be able to do it remotely from sitting here or anywhere in the world, and working with someone that you've never met. It's just not going to happen. So I think that's the key is finding that person that you trust and going over there and working with people like they're your partners as opposed to someone working for you.
I think, like Sam said, communication is really important. So like right now we have a engineering team in China, in Shenzhen, who are building the hardware for us. There's a lot of benefits to that. It's a lot faster to prototype. It takes like 2 days to get a PCB. they get a component in one day versus over here it takes a couple of days for it to ship. So there's a lot of benefits to that. And so we have our engineering team in China, and we communicate with them on almost a daily basis. So we have an electrical engineer. His name's Marco, who's leading the engineering team in China. So the team in China are Chinese. They don't really speak English. Marco doesn't speak English too well either because he's from Italy, and so spent all his years in Italy. So the way they communicate, initially they use Skype to talk, but then they found it didn't work because when you talk verbally, especially when you're not in person, sometimes things get lost. And so the method they switched to now is like sending emails to each other. And for most engineers in China, they all know English to some extent. And with technical terms, there's really not that many different ways of translating it. So it's pretty easy to communicate technical stuff in English for these engineers and for our engineer over here. And so the benefit we get from that is since there's a 15-hour time difference, when we're working in the daytime over here, our engineers are sleeping in China. But when we go to bed, they're working in China. And so you really get a really fast iteration process so that every morning and evening we can touch base with them and hear updates about what's going on. And so the company is like constantly innovating and building on a 24-hour basis because you have a remote team in China and the US that's constantly communicating with each other. So communication is definitely important, and finding the right way of communication, whether that's verbal or through WeChat, Skype, or through emails is really important.
Yeah, find the right way to get communication more smoothly. Okay. See the question about the, now this kind of the startups, hardware startups are aggressively raising fund in the valley now. So, but just in China, let me see, almost each well-known VC, China background VC are now aggressively investing in hardware startups. So if you try to just really doing something in Shenzhen, no matter just find an engineering co-founder or just find a manufacturing team there or work with the partner there. So do you think that possible, or does it make sense to accept this kind of the fundraisings from China-backed venture capitals? Does it make sense? Because we see in IDG, Sequoia, Matrix Partners, Lightspeed, this kind of the VCs and the China capital are now aggressively investing in the hardware startups, and some kind of a China local VCs are investing in that. Even like Foxconn or Huawei or TCL, even Tencent or Baidu, and their corporate ventures are investing in the hardware startups. So that makes sense to accept those kind of the money, as the Silicon Valley startup or San Francisco startup.
I definitely could speak to that. I think there's a tremendous value add from a China-based or a Shenzhen-based investor, because more often than not, they will be embroiled and deep interested in the hardcore technical side of your product, and will be interested in being sold on the benefits of why your product is technically better. When you're working with US-based VCs, oftentimes they really do want the upper level. They want the 10,000-foot view. And when your product is beautiful because of the details and beautiful because of how well you've managed them and shown a new way of crunching the numbers, if they're not willing to get down into that nitty-gritty with you, you may never ever show them the magic, and they may demand bigger controls over your company or changes that actually don't make sense because they're not truly in the zeitgeist of your thought process. With a China-based VC, you have the opportunity, not everybody of course has this ability, but you have the opportunity to pair with someone who is uniquely interested in not only your general market, but specifically why your product exists in that market and why it's useful in that market. So the possibility that they're honestly and personally excited about what you're building for the reasons that you yourself are excited about it are much higher. Everybody wants to build a product that's successful, saleable, and marketable, will make everybody money. That's going to be the end of the conversation with every VC here in the USA. That's going to be what they want to start with as well.
How about Arvind?
Yeah.
You're a VC guy.
Yeah, so I'll echo Sam for maybe from a different perspective. As a US-based VC that spent a couple years in China, I I think it's an interesting question. Whenever I lead rounds or participate in rounds with my startups, one of the things I really think about is who's in the round that's adding value. And I think, if in a hardware startup, particularly manufacturing and being able to deliver and being able to ship, all of those things matter so greatly that someone from Shenzhen would be a huge value add into a round, a huge value add. Part of having multiple VCs in rounds is about growing your network and growing the ability for your company to reach new audiences. Now, that's going to be in very different areas, right? So one VC might be great for marketing. One might be great for some other function. But having someone that it would be in Shenzhen that would be able to speak to customs, right? Speaking to all of these things that you don't even think about on the surface. But, a container is being held up in the port, right? Maybe that, it's very helpful to have someone on the ground there that's deploying capital that might be able to point you in the right direction. So I think it's critical.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I totally second that. Money is the same, in terms of just money, it's the same whether it's coming from a Chinese investor's pocket or a US investor's pocket, if it was just about the money. But then it's actually what's outside the money that's really valuable. It's the connections that they're able to give you. So like one potential investor that we were talking to recently just introduced us to this other company that's building a truck automation system. And that's really interesting because we're building a device that can track if you're falling asleep at the wheel. So if we can connect to a truck so that it then automatically switches on, like self-driving, the self-driving system, then that could prevent accidents possibly. And so, it's connections like that is very intangible, but it could potentially mean a huge asset to you in terms of market development or business relationships or opportunities. And so right now, in our current fundraising round, we have some Chinese investors and we also have US investors. And what that gives us is the US investors are the people who have access to resources to the trucking industry or auto industry in the US. Our Chinese investors have connections to manufacturing and hardware and sales channels in China. And so like what Arvind said, for a hardware business, manufacturing is a huge part of your success and failure. And so having an investor with those types of connections are really important. And so it's really more recognizing what can your investor bring you as opposed to just, how much can they bring you? But that being said, not every Chinese investor necessarily has the right connections. So that's also something that you want to really, really understand first.
Okay, great.
Also, just to add, I was actually reading a post this week that there were 10 Chinese billionaires in Silicon Valley, and they wanted Silicon Valley to know that they want to invest in Silicon Valley startups.
Yeah.
So
fucking big deal.
Such a big deal, yeah. But it's just interesting how, rather than investing in Chinese startups, they want it to be known that they're here, and they want to invest in US startups.
Yeah, great. So in the coming questions still about manufacturing, just as you just described Shenzhen by using the word like international or changing dynamic or heaven or hell, these kind of things. I have to say, I know you're choosing those kind of the more sort of like positive words, but still I believe in some guys here still just have some kind of the doubt on the manufacturing, on the quality or these kind of things in Shenzhen. So Sam, and Sam Force were asking for is, okay, no matter of that, you're working for inWatch, is a China smartphone maker, right? So yeah, smartwatch maker. So you have this kind of the comments on these kind of things like the quality or the branding of Shenzhen. Is that really so positive in terms of this kind of the can doing this kind of the manufacturing quality control while or not? And I believe it, and you can just share your stories about it, how you can find the right manufacturer there, how you can find the right partner there, how is the cost? I mean, how is the cost? How much is the cost? Or do you just feel these kind of the failures when you just talking with these kind of manufacturers or partners, or this kind of things? But I believe it's still a big problem. It's still a question open to debate, I think.
Of course, it's open to debate. As to being a big problem, I actually wouldn't agree. Everything is a big problem before you understand the tools that you need to manage that problem. And when looking at manufacture in Shenzhen, there are a lot of areas that you can go wrong, but those same areas are very well known. It's not like you will be the first person to hit those problems. So if you do your research and you talk to other people that have done boots on the ground business in Shenzhen, you will be very happy to hear that they have similar feedback. And so once you learn that and you can begin following those pieces of feedback, you can get closer to where you would want to be in terms of quality and consistency. There are many factories that exist solely for the short relationship with their customer. And I think that recognizing that that's a different kind of business model than an individual who understands the long game and understands that they will get more out of a customer if they perhaps front load their costs in favor of providing them with a quality product in the long run, that is becoming more accepted, more popular. And those customers that have been bitten by those short-run manufacture styles are being very vocal. And so there are less and less people that are willing to go and hit that wall. So the more we talk about this, the more we sit on stage and describe this effect to you folks, the easier it is for folks to go to China and make the correct decisions and not imagine that every factory, however large or small, is going to give them the same output or the same treatment. So it's more than money, and it's more than who you know. It's just the actual conversations that you have with those people, how they feel about you as a person, whether or not they want to do long-term business with you. That affects everything about the price, everything about the quality, the consistency, how much the people on the ground have to work to keep all of those things very high. The social connection and the social reality in Shenzhen is equally as important as the product design and as the business development, I believe.
And actually, you made a really good point earlier up in the green room that the expression "made in China" has really bad connotations. It's kind of, if it's made in China, it's considered cheap, or it's not a luxury product. And I think you're right. I think it is beginning to change, and we are beginning to be able to change that. Maybe you can shed some more ideas on how to change that in a minute. But for us, we're trying to build a luxury product here. Our price point is $100. Yeah. And so for us, it's really been about communicating with the factories in China on building and using the right material so that it has the feel of a luxury product, and getting rid of this this mark here, and working with the factories in China on making it very high quality. But I'd love to know your thoughts on how we can get rid of the made in China connotations.
Yeah, sure. It looks more elegant, actually. Yeah.
I think that the made in China connotation was put in place over a long period of time. I think that the kind of general rule around those things is however long it took to put the bad idea in place, it takes twice that long to remove it. I would appreciate if we could all work together to prove that wrong. I don't think that it should take another 20 years for us to understand that China is extremely capable and absolutely at the cutting edge and the forefront of the world's technological innovation and design manufacture. It certainly is available for people to see if they know what products to purchase and they have them in their hand. They put them up against another product that they think is the best of the best. The quality is right there for you to observe, and it's definitely possible to see.
And just for the record, I bought my wedding dress from Alibaba.com for $150, and it's beautiful. So I love Chinese manufacturing, and I blogged about it, and hopefully more Americans can buy their wedding dresses from China.
Cool. So Arvind, how do you think about this kind of deal?
Yeah, I actually think that the attitudes have changed quite a bit already. I don't know very many people who will say made in China is garbage anymore. I mean, all the iPhones are made in China, right? Like, people know that. That's not a question. I think the question is becoming much more of a patriotic one, right? You buy American to keep jobs here, sort of question. And it's becoming a philosophical one, right? Are you buying locally? Are you doing things in a way that's good for the environment, right? Like these are the bigger questions. It's not like cheap or not. It's are you doing it in a way that's dumping hundreds of tons of pollutants into the ocean, right? These are the things that people are grappling with, and so there's a lot of room to grow, both for all regions of the world, right? Not just for China, not just for the United States, but for Southeast Asia, for all the moons of manufacturing, right? Like in the Caribbean and Eastern Europe. So it's not. I don't think it's just about quality anymore.
And to add to that, to totally agree with all that. I think there's definitely a lot of good factories in China and some bad ones too. So finding the right ones to work with is really important. So like what Hermione said, sharing the same vision with those factories, having them understand that you're just a startup and you probably don't have that many resources to take a failure. But if you do succeed, they're in it with you is really important. So sharing that vision with them. And there's a lot of human factors to it. Taking one anecdote from our fellow accelerator company called Everpurse, what they said was that when they go visit factories, they talk to the employees at the factories, the workers at the factories, and see if they're happy. Because what they believe in is that if the factory employee isn't happy at that factory, they have a higher likelihood of taking your invention out of the factory and selling it to someone else. So this is a very that's a very different factor about just how the boss of the factory is running the company. It's also how is he treating his employees that in turn affects the quality of your product. And so that's also something you want to see is overall how is this factory managing its operations more than just what the factory owner is telling you.
I want to add a small piece to that. I had the best time engaging in social engineering in China and witnessing how certain elements factored there versus here, and just exactly what you're just saying. Seeing those tools open up whole new worlds and open up new ideas for the people that you're working with, I think was just incredible. I've never seen the social good and the social engineering elements of business be more effective than in Shenzhen.
Okay, great. That's interesting. Okay, just for each speaker, and just give one sentence on what you're currently doing and what you can suggest for our audiences who might be interested in doing a hardware startup. Just to suggest them how can they work with Shenzhen, just using 1 or 2 sentences. Okay.
Starting off with what we're doing.
What you're doing and what's your suggestion on how to work with Shenzhen partners or this kind of things.
Yeah. What we do, like I said, is we do our manufacturing in Shenzhen, we do our engineering and our mechanical design. So I think my advice would be to really figure out what you think Shenzhen can bring to you or what China can bring to you, and then really leverage that. Talent is a lot cheaper in China, it's a lot more abundant in China as well. And so you don't have to compete with Google and Facebook like you have to do over here. And so really leveraging these aspects of Shenzhen is important.
And the winner is. Hey, so what I'm up to, I'm currently building the San Francisco office for SOS Ventures and investing in amazing startups. So if you are one or know of any, please let me know. But also, working with Shenzhen, apply to hacks. I'll leave it there.
Okay. Thank you, Arvind.
谢谢.
So we're running an Indiegogo campaign right now for the next 10 days. We are still on Indiegogo for inWatch Z that you can currently still get at an introductory price of $199, which is pretty awesome. This is an unlocked smartwatch, so please feel free to back us if that's what you want. Aside from that, we're building our US team, reaching out to folks that would be interested in this kind of a device and hoping to get feedback from them as to how it does or does not meet up to their expectations. And that's been actually going incredibly well. We've got excellent stuff to go on for the next revisions. How you can work well with Shenzhen right now is just save a ticket and go there. You need to see it. You need to meet the people, eat the food, smell the streets, understand as much as you possibly can. Then set your expectations. Then try to achieve those expectations as best you can.
Yeah, book a ticket and go there right away. Okay.
I would say don't be afraid to put a lot of responsibility on the factories and ask them for help. If you need help with innovation and actually developing your product, they're really smart people and they can do a lot. And encourage all your American friends to buy stuff from China.
Oh, buy stuff from China. Okay, thank you.